Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we're in Psalm 104. And as we read the psalm last time, one of the things that jumps off the page at you is the fact that there is an extensive amount of discussion about God and His creation. God and how He works with the things around us and how He is responsible for all that we have in this world. And so, as we look at the things of Psalm 104 today, it's going to be within the framework of that backdrop of why God is worthy of our praise and why He is worthy of the honor that we bestow upon Him for the things that He has done. When you look at Psalm 104, there are several places that we could examine the details of that we're not going to necessarily have time to do today, but let's pull out just a couple of them. The first one is found in verse 5, where there he says, "You laid the foundations of the earth so that it should not be moved forever. You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains." Now, here you're going to have a couple different things, and it's going to extend into the next few verses as well, that the psalmist is going to identify. The first one is that the Lord laid the foundations of the earth. The Lord was the one who was responsible for the earth being here, for the way that it looks, for the things that are upon it, for all of those areas of emphasis. And so you're going to have this acceptance and this acknowledgement that God is the creative power, the creative genius behind our world and everything that surrounds it and inhabits it, which is something that is not readily accepted in our world today. And yet it is something that throughout Scripture you have not just the acknowledgement of, but the requirement of, by the way that God ties Himself to the creative process. On top of that, you have not just the acknowledgement of the creation, you also have the acknowledgement of the flood of Genesis 6 through 9 as well. Notice what he says in verse 6. "You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. At the voice of your thunder they hastened away. They went up over the mountains. They went down into the valleys, to the place where you founded for them. You have set a boundary that they may not pass over, that they may not return to cover the earth." You have this acknowledgement of the boundaries that God put in place, the things that God has put in place so that what happened at the beginning and what was there at the beginning, as you look at Genesis 1 and what happened in the days of the flood in Genesis 6 through 9, does not happen again, in keeping with the promise of God. And so, it doesn't mean that there will never be a flood anywhere again, but notice the statement specifically applies to the fact that they may not return to cover the earth, that they will not once again be a world where the water covers it all. And so you have this acknowledgement not just of the creative power of God, but also of the things that are stated in the other facets of Scripture and in the other areas of Scripture pertaining to God's interaction with the world. The second area is down toward the end of the psalm that I want us to look at, because in verse 24 he's going to talk once again about the power of God. And the statement in verse 24 is, "O Lord, how manifold are your works! In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions." Now, in the previous verses leading up to this, the psalmist has spent a great deal of time talking about the natural world in which we live, the things that God has made, the animals that He has created, the different ecosystems that He has put into place, and all of the ways that they function together. And what it brings the psalmist back to in verse 24 is the manifold, the many-sided nature of God's works. That God doesn't just focus on one thing, that God doesn't just care about one thing, but rather that his wisdom and his majesty in what he has created goes across the full spectrum of his creation. It's not just seen in man, and it's not just seen in the world. It's seen in everything that he used and everything that he continues to use to populate and to care for the world that he created. God is the one in control. You know, the statement will be made in verse 31, may the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. The ultimate overwhelming desire is to give honor and praise to the one who made it all, so that he might receive glory for the things which he has done, and rejoice not just in what he created, but in who he created. We have in Psalm 104 a marvelous reminder of the creative power of God, yes, but also of the sustaining power of God. From the standpoint that God is not just the one who made this world, he is the one who sustains it. He is the one who continues to interact with it. And you know, there are many people who worry a great deal about this world on which we live, and yet they do so from the mindset and from the acknowledgement in their minds that there is nobody who is watching out for the world but them. That simply is not true. There is the Creator. There is the one who made it. And there is the one who rejoices in his creation. And with that, we need to recognize that God does continue to watch out for that which he has created, and he continues to interact with it as well. That being said, we also then have a responsibility to take care of what was made for us, and to take care of what it was that was placed in our possession, and to use it, but not abuse it. And there's a difference between the two. These are some of the things that I see in Psalm 104. I hope that they have been beneficial to you. Next time, we'll come back and we'll begin looking at Psalm 105. Thank you for watching the video today, and I hope that you'll join us again next time. But until then, have a great day.